Hi there and welcome back to the next episode in our Introduction to Programming series. This week we're going to be doing a slightly more complex application, so if you're looking for something simple to start off with, please feel free to look at last week's episode. This week we're looking at C#, which is again in the .NET framework, and we will be using Visual Studio to do the coding. If you don't already have Visual Studio, go to visualstudio.com and download it from there. I'm using the release candidate for Visual Studio 2017 at the moment. Without any further ado, let's get cracking. And we're going to start off by hitting more project templates down at the bottom to create our new project. Now, if the last thing you did was in F#, like me, and during last week's episode, you're going to want to scroll up to Visual C# and click that. C# can be a visual language and is often referred to as Visual C#, however it doesn't need to be, and in this application itself we will be using a console application. So here we're going to select console app.NET Framework. It's very important you remember .NET Framework, not .NET Core. .NET Core apps are a slightly different thing. They run off the same basic framework, but .NET Core is very cut down, and that's the multi-platform new version of .NET that hopefully more people will be moving to within the next few years. .NET Framework's what we'll be working on at the moment, as it is the Windows standard, and my app's going to be called Episode 2. Just so it's organised with the other applications on my computer. If you want to give it your own name, you can, feel free. The brief of the application this week is that we work for a company selling alcohol online. As we work for a company selling things, we need to create packaging labels to put in the post. However, you can also only sell to people who are 18 or over, because like all good people, we live in Britain. So, let's hit OK. And Visual Studio is going to build the basics of our app for us. As you can see, it was nice and quick for me. That's very unusual. So let's go through what we have. Here we have namespaces. These are like libraries in other languages. It says using, which tells the computer what we are using. In F# you have open. In Pascal you have uses. In C you have include, etc. This is using. And these are just some basic ones that it suggests we use. As you can see, because we don't have much code in at the moment, they're all greyed out, which shows we're not actually using any of them yet. Okay, so we have here a namespace for this project itself. So if you were to create another project that is linked into this, you could also include this namespace using episode 2. But for this case, we won't need to. You can see it has a class, as it's an object-oriented language, and the class is a program. It's a program. And we have our main function, similar to the entry point in F# or begin and end Pascal, main in C usually, etc. It's a static void. Static means it's non-invocable, I'm going to say. You might want to look that one up. And void means it doesn't matter what the return value is, the computer's just going to ignore it. As you can see, it takes an argument string. Not going to worry about that at the moment because we're not calling it with any parameters just yet. So, let's begin by declaring some variables we're going to need. So obviously, we're going to be sending things out to customers. You need a customer name. So we're going to declare that as a string. A string is just a series of text, a series of characters. And we're going to just call that customer cust name. Okay. In C# you always end your lines with a semicolon. And because it's C#, we can do things in a very compound way. It's a very modern, very ultra efficient language. And rather than just declaring, we declare and use a variable at the same time. We're not using it just yet, so we'll just have it as blank. String custName equals open and close speech marks, a blank string. We also need an integer. We need to know the customer's age. Use the same naming convention for all your variables if possible. And again, we're just going to give that a value straight off the bat of 0. I.e. if they don't put a value in, you're going to throw the order away anyway. You're not sending something out to someone you don't know the age of. And they're going to live at a house, obviously, that we're going to be sending it to. We need a house number. So declare another integer, which in C# is int. Cust num for number. And again, give it a value. Then we're going to need their postal code because they live in the UK. So cust postcode. As you can see, you can't put spaces in variable names in C#. It follows the common convention for that. You just can't put spaces in. Underscores, hyphens, capitals, lowercase, all fine. No spaces. And often, especially in other countries, you would need now to put a street and town and city, etc. in there. But in Britain, that's not necessarily needed because from a number and a postcode, you can find an address. Postcodes are unique to certain areas, and within those areas, you usually only have one of each number, at least in this example. So we're going to begin by writing out to our user. Because we're in a console application, it's console dot. Now because we want to write a line, it's simply write line. Can't get much easier than that. And we're going to give it some operators. The operator we're going to give it is a string, and that string is what it's going to print out. What is the customer's name? Now we've written that out, we want to read it back. So we're going to then put it into a variable. So we're going to say cust name equals the value that they put in. Now we can find the value the user puts in, again with another console command, console dot readline. Readline is a function, a built-in function, so you need your opening and closing brackets. As you can see with these two lines, using system is lit up at the top. This is because the program is using the system library, which is the standard library for just about everything, to provide console.writeLine and console.readline predefined functions to us. We actually don't need the rest of these in this app, and if you already know what you will and won't need, it's quite safe to delete the rest of the namespaces. I personally don't tend to delete namespaces off the bat, generally speaking, but in this case it's fine because I know what the app's going to turn out as anyway, because I have a printout of it next to me, because last week's notes were quite inadequate. So, now we've got that, we want to know what their age is. So, again, console.writeLine, pass it a string. What is the customer age? End the line with a semicolon, and cust age. Now we could say here equals console.readline, but this will throw up an issue. And the issue is that readline always passes everything as a string. You don't know what the user's put in, but a string can hold any information. So it passes everything as a string. Cust age is not a string, it says int, it's an integer. More specifically, in the current version of the .NET framework, int is a shortcode for a 32-bit integer. So, what we're going to do is something a bit sneaky here, and we're going to invoke a parsing method. Now what this does is it says, okay, you have this, and you know it's this type, but in reality, it's actually this type. So we're going to take it and just pretend it is the new type, and parse it as the new type. And that is int 32.parse, and we then pass our console.readline as an operator or parameter into int32.parse, and there we go. It works. No issues. So we're going to continue doing the same, and I'll see you back there in a minute once you've done the same with your other two. Hopefully by this point you should have something along these lines. Checks the customer's name, age, house number and postcode. This is excellent. What I'm actually going to do now isn't necessarily needed in this application, but it's a nice little feature and it's useful to know. Console.WriteLine can use what we call string concatenation. You can take strings and shove them together even within an operator for another function in C#. Console.WriteLine is one of these. So I can say console.WriteLine, and now inside here we could have one string, or we can have one string and add to that string another. And this is still valid, because what it's doing is it's taking these two strings inside your operator and shoving them together, making one single string that it will eventually pass on to console.WriteLine. Another good use of this is we could say customer name, and we could then add in our string of cust name. And this still accepts it as a valid string because cust name holds the value of a string. And we also have the words customer name as a string. So it then adds these together and we have customer name colon then cust name. The plus is what we use in C# for concatenating strings. Other languages you may use things like dots in PHP, commas in Pascal. I think VB script uses ampersand, something like that. Anyway, now we have all this, we're going to check the user's details. So we want to first of all print all of the details out. So I'm going to leave a little line break. A quick cheaty way of doing this is go into your last line and just again add on another bit of string, and \n is a standard character code for a line break within a string. So now we have this, we've got a line and then a drop to space out for the next part of what the user is going to see. So what the user is now going to see is something to check the details are correct. So we say console.WriteLine, are these details correct? I don't know if you've ever noticed it's extraordinarily difficult to type on camera. Yes or no. We'll take a yes or no input from them. Okay. Are these details correct? Yes or no? And now what we can do is we've got a choice. We can either do what we've done here, add a line break and then keep going and add more strings, or we can write another console.WriteLine. I'm going to write another console.WriteLine just because it looks neater and is more efficiently written and easier to read for the developer and anyone maintaining your code. So again, console.WriteLine. You'll notice as you write also this little box pops up to give you possible options, and eventually it'll get used to the way you're typing and what you're doing, and it'll figure out normally 9 times out of 10 the exact right thing you want to type. And this is called Intellisense, and it's something Microsoft have been working on for a long time. It's been a feature in Visual Studio for quite a while now, and I absolutely love it because I'm a lazy programmer. So we have console.WriteLine, and what we can do here is I want to space everything out so it's neat and it all meets. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a pile of spaces so that it's all in line, and now I'm going to say cust name. I say name is customer name, and this will make it so it's all in line after the colon. There are other ways of doing it. You can create tables, etc., but this is just easy. Okay, So I'm going to continue on with the 4 variables that we're using, and I'll see you in a minute once you've done the same. We have something like this now. So are these details correct, yes or no? And it will print out the list of details. At the moment, we're just going to test what we have so far. Now the problem is, because it's a console application, it will run and there's nothing to stop it at the end, so it will run until it closes. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a blank console.read line. And this will now wait for the user to input anything, but it won't do anything with it. So we'll start it up and we'll see what it does. So what is the customer's name? He's called James. The customer's age, he's 567. The customer's house number is 21. The customer's postcode is L01, that's a 2, 5ZZ. It's not a real postcode. And so are these details correct? And it brings up the list that we've created in the format we've created it in. Yours might be ever so slightly different. Your details certainly will be unless you put in the same things as me. And there we go. So this is all working quite well. We've even got that nice little double line break right here, which we created a few minutes ago. Is you hit enter, it will have read the line, not done anything with it, and discarded it. Excellent. So we're going to change things up a bit now. We're going, we're going to now use this console.readLine in a slightly different way. We're going to use an inline variable. Now here we have a list of variables. You can also in C# declare your variables in with the rest of your code. So we're going to have a char, which is a single character. It's going to be called, let's call it yn for yes or no. Say equals console.readLine, but again, you can't have it equal to console.readLine. So where our formats didn't match earlier, we had int32.parse. So here we've got a char. Can we do char.parse? Well, we'll find out. Yes, we can. So again, use our type, .parse. Excellent, it always works. We've got this now. And so we can do something with this. We have our yes or no. So we're going to do a conditional statement, an if statement. If a condition is met, we want it to do this. Otherwise, we want it to do something else. So we'll say if yes or no. We want to check whether the value of it is y. Have they said yes? But there's always the possibility they might have done something stupid, because users do. They might have read y and n and put in a lowercase y or a lowercase n. So we're going to do an or. In C#, conditional or is just 2 vertical lines. It's shift and the button next to it on most English keyboards. And we're going to say or yn equals. You'll notice these equals signs are double equals, and this is the conditional equals. It's always checking for conditions when you're doing an if statement. It's not about assigning a value, which is what the equals have done up here. We've said this is now equal to this, force it. Now it's looking, is this equal to this? So we're saying, or if yn equals y, a lowercase y. Then we want it to do something. We're going to say, we'll start off with some comments here. So do something. And that's a single line comment in C#, just like we had in F#. So else or otherwise. C# uses the word else for this. So else, do nothing. We're not going to say do nothing because that doesn't help. Instead we're going to leave everything. We're in a procedure at the moment, we want to break out of it, quit the program. That's just return. This returns a no value. Obviously this is void, so it doesn't need a value. So else return. Just kill the program. We don't need it if it's not right. Okay? So if it's yes or yes, do this. Now, I'm going to create a separate function for what it needs to do now, because it's always good to separate your code up into manageable chunks, and this at the moment is getting a bit long for my liking. So here I'm going to create a private, which means within this section only, static, we talked about earlier, void function, again void we talked about earlier, and it's going to be called writeout, because it's eventually going to write our function out onto a printing label for us to use. Okay, it's a function, it needs an opening and closing brackets to accept parameters, and this is it. Now I want it to accept parameters because I want to be able to pass customer name, age, number, and postcode down into this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create local versions of them, and I can declare them in our parameters section here. So I can say string lock cust name, local customer name, comma, and I can create my next one, int lock cust age, and let's carry on like this. Okay, you should now hopefully have something like this. So we're going to now check the user's age. Because this is obviously a restricted product, we're only going to be selling it to people who are old enough to buy it. So we want to say if, we'll use another conditional statement here, we'll say if lock cust age is greater than 18, we'll sell it to them, we'll create this label. Now we want to create a label. There is a method of printing out to a file. This file will contain the label. So this file will contain everything we need to slap on top of a parcel to send out. And someone else will deal with that, we'll say at the moment. So that command is a rather awkward one. It's system.io input output dot file for a file dot write all text, because we're having text that we're writing out to it. Okay? And again, it's a predefined function. Now, we're going to use a literal string here because people could have put anything into our functions earlier, and just like that, there are some really weird characters in file names. So, at, and this is how you define a literal string. So this is a normal string, and if you were to have, say, a file called numbers, it would be referred to as \numbers. But there's a problem here, that in a string, \n is a return line. We don't want that, so we'll instead have at. And this says, whatever escape characters you come across, anything like that, ignore it. It's a literal string. It is what it says. And we're going to declare our file name here, so it'll be in our hard drive, C, usually. It'll be in our users. It'll be in your files, whatever your username is. And it will be, let's put it in your documents. Obviously this is all fairly simple stuff. You know how file names are written. If you have another file name you want to put it in, you can find out how to do that. And now we're going to pass a second parameter, because system.io.file.writeAllText takes two parameters. It takes your file and it takes your value, the text we're going to write into it. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to write, we want our local customer name, and we then want a line return. And again, this isn't a literal string because we actually do want a line return there. And we want, well, we don't want the age because we've already dealt with that, and that's not really important on a packaging label, but the house number certainly is. And again, another line return. And then we need the postcode. And it's just that simple. Actually, it's not. I've misspelled this. Within your documents, you need to create a file for this because we're saving it to a file. And let's just call it label.txt because it's the label that's going to be stuck on a parcel. Okay. We now have this. So if that happens if the customer's over 18. If they're not over 18, I should actually say if they're over or equal to 18, because if they're 18 years old, it's still legal. Else, so if they aren't over 18, console.writeLine customer is too young. And then we don't want them to do anything, we don't want to save a file or anything like that because we're not going to be sending them the alcohol. So, return. Simple as that. We have here a fairly full program, but the problem is we have this function here and we have this main one here, but the two aren't linked. We need to do something here if they click yes. And this is where we're going to call our function. So we're going to say write out, and now we need to give it parameters. And as you can see, the parameters it takes are customer name, customer age, customer house number, and customer's postcode. So let's do that. And as you can see, I've mistyped this here. That should be a string for their postcode. Okay, and now we have our fully fledged, fully working application. Let's actually run this. What is the customer's name? He's called James. What is the customer's age? He's now 37. He's a lot younger than the last time when he was 500 and something. Customer's house number, he lives at number 78. The customer's postcode is BR7, that's a 5, 6YF. Again, not a real postcode, I don't think. Are these details correct? Yes or no? Yes. And now it will print out to the file. Except it would if I was called you. So thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed and I hope you tune in for next week's episode. I'll see you then.